The station owners, Nexstar and Sinclair, pulling Jimmy Kimmel from their stations, his already horrific ratings, and the FCC's role, if there was any, behind this decision. My next guest, though, did not agree. He responded to me on X, writing, quote, "If they had just fired Kimmel as a private business decision, okay, that's fine. But the head of the FCC threatened their licenses and said, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Then they axed Kimmel. That's a government pressure campaign." Joining me now to have the debate, host of Brad versus Everyone podcast and Steamboat Institute fellow Brad Palumbo. Brad, great to have you here today. You know I always welcome the disagreement and the debate, but I do think you're simply wrong on this. You've heard my argument. Let's hear yours.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, if they had just decided to get rid of Kimmel, so be it. As a market decision, I don't think he's been funny in at least a decade, and I think what he said about Charlie Kirk was gross. But I think it's really, really reprehensible, and I do think it's an attack on the First Amendment for the FCC chairman to speak almost like a mafia boss and say, nice license your member stations have there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it, right? He said, his exact words were, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Correct.
If you don't take action on Kimmel.
However,
that's jawboning.
Okay, I want to take this on the actions that happen and the actions that could happen. First of all, it doesn't appear that the FCC had any influence or effect on the decision by Nexstar and Sinclair and ultimately by ABC. These stations made their decision independently and by most accounts before FCC Chair Brendan Carr went on to Benny Johnson's show and uttered the words that you just repeated. This was a market-based decision. This was consumers in middle America who take Nexstar and Sinclair stations saying enough. This is the owners of those stations saying enough. And then it's ultimately the heads of ABC and Disney going, wow, we can't lose 60 stations. We've got to do something about Jimmy Kimmel. So your fear of jawboning by the government simply didn't play out in the case of Jimmy Kimmel.
Well, I don't think either of us know that for certain. We can't get in the minds of the executives. I'm repeating the reporting from both The Hollywood Reporter and The Wall Street Journal. Right, and the show's been on air for 22 years, and it was canceled the same day he made those threats. Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it had no effect at all. Doesn't change the fact it is wildly inappropriate for an FCC chair to speak like this.
Let's get to that. Okay. To be clear, though, on the events of Jimmy Kimmel, my opinion right now is based in the reporting of what actually happened. Yours is based upon speculation and fear of what could have happened.
Well, there's mixed reporting.
Well, it does not appear that it had anything to do with the FCC. However, I do think it's important to move the debate forward, Brad, because just here yesterday, the commissioner said there will be other shoes that will drop. So he is saying the power of the FCC to regulate airwaves in the interest of the public resides with the FCC. Now, I, just like you, am devoted to the First Amendment. I believe not just governmentally, but culturally in the concept of free speech. However, ABC, NBC, and CBS are not Fox News. They are not CNN. They are not YouTube. They are regulated by the government. They have a monopoly on public airwaves, granted to 3 or 4 licensees. And with that granted monopoly comes the regulation by the government. The regulation states is what you're doing in the interest of the public. And I think you might even agree with me that what has been programmed at all of those broadcast networks doesn't satisfy many people's definition of serving the public interest. It's one-sided, it's agenda-driven, it's often wrong, it's propaganda. How is that public interest?
Well, I think a lot of your critiques are legitimate, but I don't want the government coming in and saying for ideological or even fact-based disputes, right? In the same way, let me paint you a picture for a moment. Imagine that after the 2020 election, Biden's FCC had said to the 500 radio stations, which are also regulated by the FCC, that carry Fox News radio, that listen, you guys got to get rid of this Sean Hannity guy, or take action on Hannity, or easy way or hard way, or those licenses could be in danger. I would call that an attack on the free press. I would call that an attack on the First Amendment, and I think you would too. But the only difference here is that the partisan loyalties are switched here. And if we have double standards, well, we don't have any standards at all.
I think that's a pretty interesting analogy. What I think is a more apt, not analogy, but historical example. And I want to be clear to you in the audience. We're talking specifically about the FCC. So that does not apply to private citizens, to social media, to cable news. It doesn't apply to anything but broadcast licensed media entities, which are licensed by the government and therefore regulated by Congress, empowered through the FCC. We have a history. In fact, we have half a century of history of all of these networks doing something. I looked up what does it mean to be in the public interest, Brad. It does mean a diversity of viewpoints. Do you think you can look at ABC or NBC or CBS over a half a century and say they've honored that requirement of serving the public interest, a diversity of viewpoints?
No, not necessarily, although, to be honest, I'm not sure you could look at Fox News Radio and say the same thing. I would rather let the marketplace decide.
But Fox,
let
okay,
viewers
here's
and
where your
listeners
analogy
tune
fails.
in or not tune
Fox
in.
News Radio is one of many, many, dozens and dozens of stations across the country that carry various viewpoints. In the case of television, it's 3 or 4. That's it. So in radio,
they could threaten
you have
the licenses
dozens,
in the same
radio,
way. You either want to play this game or you don't.
Of licensed channels to provide a multitude of viewpoints, if you will, a diversity of viewpoints to serve the public interest. That's not the way it's been in television.
None of that changes the First Amendment and free speech concerns. The Supreme Court just ruled 9-0. You cannot exert pressure on private companies as the government to make ideological-based changes or punish their viewpoints. I think it's very clear, even if I find the viewpoints reprehensible that Jimmy Kimmel espoused, that that is what's happening here. And frankly, I came on Fox many times to blast the Biden administration's jawboning. They were pressuring private companies to take down free speech. When Brendan Carr gets up there and threatens to take away or revisit licenses and says we can do this the easy way or the hard way, it's wildly inappropriate. It's attack on free speech and it's attack on the First Amendment. And I would feel the same way regardless of the partisan loyalties involved.
I appreciate
here.
the argument. I appreciate hearing your point of view. I don't think I'm hypocritical or partisan on the application of the First Amendment. I think we are not making appropriate, or at least you in this debate, are not making appropriate accommodations for what is a congressionally regulated area of the FCC. All right, Brad, we'll continue the conversation some other time. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Will.
Senator Ted Cruz, R. Texas, in his podcast Verdict with Ted Cruz on Friday, cautioned those advocating for Federal Communication Commission action against adversaries, noting if a censorship precedent is set, every conservative in America will regret it. ABC suspended late-night host Jimmy Kimmel indefinitely after he said the alleged assassin of Turning Point USA co-founder Charlie Kirk was a fellow MAGA supporter. Kimmel failed to set the record straight after the indictment against suspect Tyler Robinson was made public on Tuesday, prompting a response from Federal Communications Commission, FCC Chair Brendan Carr, who told Fox News' Sean Hannity the agency plans to reinvigorate enforcement of the public interest obligation. The FCC grants broadcast licenses on the condition that stations serve the public interest, convenience, and necessity. Though the First Amendment protects free speech, the agency can revoke or deny license renewal if there is misrepresentation, fraud, or lack of character or candor. In Cruz's podcast on Friday, he questioned Carr's decision to crack down on stations accused of misrepresentation or false statements, claiming, "What he said there is dangerous as hell. What he is saying is Jimmy Kimmel was lying." That's true, he was lying, and lying to the American people is not in the public interest, Cruz said. He threatens explicitly, "We're going to cancel ABC News license. We're going to take him off the air so ABC cannot broadcast anymore." He threatens it. Cruz compared Carr's wording to something right out of Goodfellas. "Jimmy Kimmel has mocked me so many times," he said. "The corporate media, they are dishonest. They are liars. I hate what Jimmy Kimmel said. I am thrilled that he was fired, but let me tell you, if the government gets in the business of saying, 'We don't like what you, the media, have said. We're going to ban you from the airwaves,' that will end up bad for conservatives." He added it may be attractive to conservatives to feel that they have the governmental power to ban the media, but going down that road would hurt them when a Democrat takes back the White House. "The next Democrat FCC, they will silence us," Cruz said. "They will use this power, and they will use it ruthlessly, and that is dangerous. They've defined anything counter to the leftist narrative as misinformation." Cruz argued that if a station commits slander related to Kirk or his family, there is already a remedy. He suggested suing stations for defamation and letting the process play out. "I think it is unbelievably dangerous for the government to put itself in the position of saying, 'We're going to decide what speech we like and what we don't, and we're going to threaten to take you off air if we don't like what you're saying,'" Cruz said. It might feel good right now to threaten Jimmy Kimmel, but when it is used to silence every conservative in America, we will regret it. So again, I like Brendan Carr, but we should not be in this business. We should denounce it. It's fine to say what Jimmy Kimmel said was deplorable. It was disgraceful, and he should be off air. But we shouldn't be threatening government power to force him off air. That's a real mistake. During a news conference in the White House Oval Office on Friday, President Donald Trump said he did not agree with Cruz's assertion, describing Carr as courageous. I think Brendan Carr is an incredible American patriot with courage, Trump said. I remember in the old days, networks would want to get relicensed. It was always a big deal. They had to show honesty and integrity. I think Brendan Carr doesn't like to see the airwaves be used illegally and incorrectly, and purposely horribly. He doesn't like to see a person that won the election in a landslide get 97% bad publicity before the election. I mean, it's amazing that I won the election. The people have given the networks no credibility. During the Biden administration, a nonprofit called the Media and Democracy Project filed a 2023 petition with the FCC asking that the license renewal of a Fox-owned local station in Philadelphia be denied, citing Fox's election-related coverage. The FCC, under then-Chair Jessica Rosenworcel, rejected the petition on January 16th, 4 days before Trump assumed office for his second term, noting it would be fundamentally at odds with the First Amendment for the government to deny renewals based on protected speech and content, according to court documents. Cruz's office did not immediately respond to Fox News Digital's request for comment.